But thank you everyone for joining our Hustle and Hang event. I am Jenalyn and I am one of the hosts, but I am also the community navigator for NorthSTAR. So if you haven't heard of NorthSTAR, or maybe you've just seen the logo behind me that was on the Eventbrite. We are a collaborative of organizations that are all dedicated to illuminating pathways to entrepreneurship and assisting individuals in addressing barriers that may come up along the way. So we all work together to make sure that the community knows that entrepreneurship is a pathway. A lot of times, I'm sure this is a common experience, is no one really talks about entrepreneurship as a career pathway. It's always like on career day, it's a firefighter or a policeman or a doctor and things like that. So me and Joe came together to host our Hustle and Hangs because our hope is that we will engage individuals that maybe are thinking of entrepreneurship or individuals that are already in their entrepreneurial journey and are just looking for support. We really want to create that community. And so with our speakers that we have, we want those speakers to kind of validate those experiences that some of our entrepreneurs or our potential entrepreneurs might be going through, and really creating a space for everyone to feel supported and know that they can reach out to us and all of our guest speakers and get that support because we are really passionate about making sure we illuminate those pathways. So I will pass it over to Joe, who is one of our other navigators, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Jenalyn. So I'm Joe. I am the advisor navigator. My role is to recruit talented folks to support our ventures in different capacities. It can be a speaking engagement, it could be a one-on-one coaching, or it can be being a guest on our event. Like Liam here, I met him at a startup event and super impressive with his background. So I was like, we need to talk to you. So thank you, Liam, for being with us and kind of lending your expertise with this group. So a little bit about Liam is that he is a startup founder, advisor, patent inventor, UX designer. This man does it all. Local boy, grew up in Irvine, Orange County, attended University of Richmond, and kind of been an entrepreneur for most of his life. So excited to kind of talk to you about your journey and how it started and where you're at today. Little fun fact is that you studied other languages. So what languages do you know?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks, Joe and Jenalyn, and everyone who's tuning in here. So I guess my first foreign language that I studied, and we'll tie into why this one in particular later, but was Mandarin. Really fascinating. Obviously different characters, different structure, whole new culture and history behind it. So I thought that was super cool. But more recently, I've actually been studying Irish, or Gaeilge, as it would be called. So not a super common language, one that more is reflective of my background. I really got to pick an easier language for my next one, but it's just something cool, something different that I like.
So could you introduce yourself in Mandarin?
Yeah, I guess 大家好, 我是罗里安. Yeah, I don't know what else I would say beyond that, but thank you everyone.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, do people get like shocked when you talk to them and they're not expecting that to come out of your mouth?
Sometimes I guess I don't know. I guess depends on the person.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for being here with us. And I know we kind of chatted a little bit. You talked about how entrepreneurship has been in like your blood since high school.
Hmm.
So kind of share with us what got you started. And in high school, I definitely was not an entrepreneur. I was ready to chill after school. So explain to us about your hustle and really what got you motivated at such a young age.
Yeah. So I guess one, you could say it was a bit of an accidental entrance into the world of entrepreneurship. And it's kind of funny. It all started because I was trying to like find some like just fun free time like a normal teenager, and then I ended up with this like whole other job and less sleep and more work. But basically, there was a company out here. They put on live entertainment events, all ages. They book really cool artists at professional venues. And there was really just nothing else like that. I thought that's really awesome. I like this kind of music. Was really big on like trap and dubstep back then. Went to one of them, and basically just by accident, or I guess I was raised in a thank you card house. So, mom makes me write out the thank you card for every single gift that I get. And so I guess this was a bit of a natural instinct. So I reached out to the guy who put it on and said, thank you. That was so awesome. Like, I think it's really cool that you do these. And then it just started as kind of a natural conversation from there. And so first he invited me to join the sales force, just kind of sell more tickets, promote it, typical kind of like campus rep type situation. But then from there, I just, I guess he could trust me, and I had no other hobbies or free time to conflict with this. So, yeah, I just became the manager of the sales force for a lot of Orange County high schools. I know I got introduced to a lot of Orange County outside of just Irvine, where I grew up through that. And yeah, I mean, I could pause there, but a lot of learning experiences that came from that first one.
I feel like the thank you note is a lost art.
Yes.
One
Absolutely.
and two, as a teenager to give a thank you note, I feel like if I received a thank you note from a teenager, my brain would explode. I'm like, because it's not a thing. So I bet that showed your maturity, and that probably did a lot of set the tone from who you are, and that impression.
Yeah, I really credit my mom for raising me with strong etiquette from the get go. In some ways, I feel guilty because I'm not doing like as many like handwritten, mailed or delivered notes. It's might just be like a quick message, an email, text, something like that. But I just feel like if I really enjoy something, regardless of whether it's put on for free or paid, like really, if I enjoy it, I think that the least I could do is let them know that they did a good job, encourage them to do the next one or encourage them to go bigger next time or whatever it is. It's just, takes so little from me. Back then I almost dreaded birthdays because I knew that would be like, 10 to 20 cards written out. But definitely the lesson carried me forward, and it's just accidentally opened a lot of doors along the way.
So you really do promote the follow up and the message of gratitude.
Yeah, yeah. It's the art of gratitude. It's not like I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna make a request right away. Oftentimes, it's just you're saying thank you because you enjoyed something, and you're not sure if they really know how good of a job they did, or if other
Mhm.
people are gonna stop and say the same thing. So it's whenever I can, never 100% perfect or as good as it about it as I would like to be, but it's just kind of built into my DNA, I guess.
Awesome. So high school hustling, you go to University of Richmond. Did you take a back seat with entrepreneurship, or did it rev up, or what what happened to college Liam?
Yeah, so, thinking back to that first experience was really cool, very eye-opening, but at the same time, I was kind of, at the right hand of the founder, but not in the founder seat myself. And so I thought like, wow, that looks really stressful. Not sure if that's for me. Maybe I just kind of got my lessons and I take it forward. And so, yeah, in my mind, like even end of high school, as I was wrapping up that experience, I was taking on like finance internships. I was, finding like textbooks on investment banking so that I could get a head start on business school. And then that's I was also learning Mandarin because I thought that's a very useful skill in finance and investment banking. Obviously, China's a massive economy, and there's a lot of potential to do deals if you're bilingual there. And so yeah, that was my plan. I thought I'm going to go to B school. University of Richmond has a great finance program, a great undergrad B school. And so in my mind, I'm totally locked in. Nothing can steer me off this path. And it wasn't like I'm just looking to find my thing to start. There was definitely interesting ideas. I always like to talk to new people. And then I heard like Mark Randolph, one of the founders of Netflix, come and speak on campus, and I thought it was all just things that are kind of getting me like vaguely interested in the idea, but not at all at a level where I'm like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to fully commit to this. And then, of course, something changed that.
Mhm. So, how do you handle that space of uncertainty when you had your mind made up?
Hmm.
Mandarin, China, business. This is my trajectory.
Yep.
You know, unless you just went total rogue and decided to go, left. What was that space like to have to sit there and be like, this is what I thought I wanted. Now I'm not so sure.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, of course, I'm like, this is an argument with myself or with my past self and all the things that I told myself. Obviously, you go into banking, it's, pretty high starting salary. If you do well, there's a pretty clear roadmap to promotion and things like that. And so obviously very competitive, but it seems like, or at least a lot of people talk about it as if it's a very sure path. If you do the right
Mhm.
things, you compete, you're in the top, X percent, you'll get there. But I think that, something that one kind of ironically through my studies of finance, you learn about risk a lot. You get exposed to like actuarial studies and just trying to like mathematically handle risk. Then you start to think about, okay, well, this, very, stable, secure path has all these risks. A lot of people get in and then they get, fired within the first year or two, especially if markets go down. People, might get to a level, but then kind of feel like they're stuck and they're not really sure what they want to do. And frankly, a lot of people just, really don't enjoy the intensity of it, or they, want to find something that connects more with who they are. And so, the best way to, cope with any risk that you think might be worth it is to really honestly look at the risks of the so-called safe path.
Mhm.
Um, but beyond that, I think, I wanted to find something that really matched who I was. And I thought, okay, I have a high risk tolerance and I love to learn. And so, I'm happy to take chances if I can, treat it like an experiment and de-risk it to the extent that I can, so that I know I can keep going, after their experiment and keep on running more of them. I think I was really, okay with that versus the other side, which is, yeah, you have your position, you're in a big city, there's cool stuff to do, but ultimately you're beholden to a very large company. Beyond that, you're beholden to, global markets and everything that can destabilize that. And so it was really, having to acknowledge every risk where it was. But once you kind of do that audit, you realize that there is no safe path, actually. There's kind of just
Mhm.
ones that fit different people better.
So, what advice would you give to somebody who is in that space right now? The
Mhm.
It's like, I want to just go for this. This is what I was told. Follow this path, and the outcome is this. And now they're kind of thinking maybe it's not.
Mhm.
What techniques would you give them to help them kind of figure out and navigate that space?
Sure. Um, I think, one, tuning out the societal message that you're sort of starting over from zero. You're not.
Mm,
You require either just maturity, you acquire professional communication skills. Like I studied finance. Obviously, there's plenty of finance related topics when it comes to startups and fundraising and, modeling and everything like that. So even if you think that there isn't going to be a direct transfer, oftentimes people would be very surprised. Like there's a lot of positions, like professional positions or sales or like customer support. They love to hire teachers because they have super high patience. If you can handle a bunch of like 6-year-olds all kind of going crazy and making noise and getting distracted, you can probably handle a bunch of adults in a business setting.
mhm,
So people, and so with that, if if there are opportunities, which there don't have to be, but sometimes there is actually that kind of hidden match on the other side, maybe public sector to private or vice versa, or into nonprofits. You can find analogous skills and roles that are definitely going to be non-obvious. And then I think another thing for people trying to manage that divide is going out and offering help is it's very very high ROI strategy, even
mhm,
though like most of the individual times you'll just end up helping and you're probably not going to get anything back or should expect anything back. my first role was just kind of going out and reaching out to the person saying like, hey, this is interesting to me. Same with pretty much all of my internships. My mom got into a nonprofit role basically through volunteering first because she really liked the
Mm,
organization. She liked what they were doing. And so, and of course, there's a limit. People need to, take care of themselves, or they need to, feed themselves and their families. But at the same time, what you can give, that like spent time or volunteer time, however you want to think about it, in terms of both personal experience and the indirect network growth that you get from that. Don't think that like everything you need to do needs to have like the clear payoff or like the direct, here's what they can do for me. You have to accept that like not everyone is going to be in a position to give you what you want, or they're not necessarily thinking about you or how they can help you, and that's okay. People are at different stages of life or have their own things going on. But put yourself out there, be willing to learn. And a lot of the things that seem very intimidating, that seem like, a true sacred science, they're really not that hard. There's just a million small things that have to be done before and after for it to work out. So it's a different way of kind of conceptualizing challenge.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned the pressure that we feel society puts on us.
Hmm.
And I think that ties into failure or fear of, where a lot of people um, try at all costs to minimize failure because they
Hmm.
see it as a negative. But what's your viewpoint on failure? And how does it relate to innovation and entrepreneurship? I feel like failure is kind of interwoven to the experience.
Hmm.
But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, failure is really like, running, in that, no one likes it. No one like actually enjoys it. Like you might enjoy the benefits that come after it, or like, the way it feels once you're like recovered and have, caught your breath or something like that. So, people can tolerate failure for sure, but people who say they really love it, maybe they're wired that way. But I don't want to make people feel like they have to be like, like super jazzed about not getting what they want, because it's not quite that, fun in the moment. But it is absolutely useful from the perspective of data generation. Yeah, the fact is, like, as you're going about, whether it's like, you're just, thinking about the idea and you're like talking about it with people and trying to get some initial feedback, a lot of times, they like you, or they're optimistic. I'm a super optimistic person. I never want to crush anyone's dream. And so I'm always going to give like that optimistic spin on the feedback, unless they're really explicitly requesting like, hey, I really need to like get the hard take on this. What do you think? But failure, that's if like true, or the, whatever, however people conceptualize like true or full failure, that is like the most valuable form of data. You can reintegrate that into your model. Like the lessons from that are usually so profoundly clear that you just don't get like that quality of directional information from that many other things. And so like that's one, it's kind of something you have to tell yourself to soften the sting when it does happen in the
Mm-hmm.
moment. But also, thinking about science, like if you're, conducting like a physics experiment or something like that, if you don't, get the result that you hypothesized, that's not considered a failure. And, the people who do think like that often try and take shortcuts, or they, you know, don't necessarily integrate ethics into their work as they should. But the ones who say, "Here's my hypothesis. I just want to find out." Right? If it is cool, that's going to inspire further experiments. If it absolutely fails, then same thing. That's going to inspire further experiments. And there's something too that has to be said, which is that a lot of times, former founders, investors, advisors, people who really have been around and have the experience to know, they're going to tell you the best advice possible in the earliest stages, and you're going to maybe be able to absorb 10% of that until you felt it yourself. There's a million rites of passage, whether it's like working with your first like agency on something, or having to make your first hire or fire. um, None of these things are guaranteed to work out right away, but that's kind of how you have to get better at them, is accepting that cycle of experimentation.
Yeah, it's not linear. Although we
Mhm.
love it to be, it's not always linear.
Yeah,
Yep.
we can kind of think of it as, you're, kind of going negative, like you see on a, like insane investment. It's like, oh, this is going down, it's going down, it's going down. As you're learning these lessons, you don't have the opportunity to apply them. If you hang in long enough, that's when you actually hit that inflection point and you really get to operationalize those lessons. And it might just be, you try a couple things and on like the second or third pivot, that's the one that strikes. Or it might be more
Mm,
progressive, here's what we thought, some failure, we adjust, some failure, we adjust, and then we're really close to it. Um, you know, really just hanging in there is where you get your ROI on failure.
awesome. I'm gonna kick it off to Jenalyn for some other questions.
Thanks, Joe. So I know we kind of briefly talked about like your pivot. Oh, am I frozen?
Looks like it.
Okay. Of course, I was
There we go.
not freezing this entire time, but as soon as I start talking. So I know we talked about like your pivot to entrepreneurship from kind of the finance career path, but what was that spark that kind of made you want to? I know you heard the founder of Netflix speak, but what was going on in your life where you thought, I can do this, or I will do this. This is
Yeah.
happening.
So I'll break that down into the two. So like the I can do this part, one, hearing the founder speak, and obviously, same thing with like Airbnb or any like major success story. Like there's stories where you're like, really? Like this is the company, like Airbnb guys like hot gluing cereal boxes together and stuff like that. So I got to see like some of that from the greats, if you will, but also I like was visiting a friend at USC, and there was this other kind of guy there we're both friends with, like really funny, like goofy guy, seemed like just like your typical like eclectic college kid. And then I went over one time to like go knock on his door, and then he was like in calls selling his first startup when I was in there, and I was like, oh, okay, well, like this guy's obviously really smart, but like he's a super goofy guy, and so if he can do that, I can probably do that. And it was just like things that kind of took away the mystique of it in a little bit more. Like I'd obviously seen the founder role, I saw the stress from it, but I hadn't seriously considered like that could be me. And then I just had a few of these experiences. You meet like an entrepreneur who's very approachable and articulate, and you think like, yeah, that's a potential path that I hadn't really thought about before. But then the one thing that actually made me want to commit to it and really devote my life to it was basically solving a problem that I had in my own life. So basically, I was like the total yes man on campus, and very, like difficult time with ADD as well. So someone would say like, hey, like let's go work out at this time and let's go study then. And someone else says like, hey, can we like go get dinner? And my mom wants to, catch up and talk on the phone, and like my laundry needs doing.
Mhm.
And any one of these things in its own silo isn't that bad, right? Like I was able to attend my classes and I got my homework done, even though I had to, stay up late after all that other stuff to do it. But trying to put it all together and like get a top down view and control of it was just a nightmare. It was completely impossible. So I thought, okay, other people have this problem. It's got to be a good solution to this out there. Looking for it, didn't find anything remotely close to what I wanted, and so it kind of got the thinking started. And then just couldn't stop. My mind was just churning on this in the background. And then kind of on the way back from a road trip, which is like total like founder story cliche, but it's true. Like when you travel, you get a lot of ideas. And so I just kind of had the idea for the centralized life schedule, kind of started like what it would look like, designed to be shared between people with a lot of visibility controls. And obviously, there's a million other things to figure out after that point. But I got really excited about it. I kind of like laughed. I was like, oh my gosh. And I like really thought like, this is something I'm gonna, pursue. It's not like, I'm gonna make this a thing, or I'm gonna make this the most successful app in the world, whatever. It's like, I'm gonna pursue this. I'm gonna make this real. I'm gonna see how it does. And then wherever it goes from there, totally fine with that. I can live with the potential for, failure in whatever forms, even though a lot of forms of startup failure are actually, quite objectively successful by other perspectives. And so from there, yeah, I switched from finance to entrepreneurship management. So, every group project basically was like a research project for my company, and, getting to like study users and do lots of interviews and secondary market research. And yeah, I just kind of never looked back.
That's great. And I love that you were able to make the pivot while you were still in school to kind of like back up kind of do the research for you and also get
Mhm.
school credit for it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So on the other side of like, so you great idea, one. Because I think most people, not just entrepreneurs, they have this issue of just finding time for everything. And then
Mhm.
also trying to one be, present in their personal life, but then also be present in your work life or your education. All at the same time can be a lot. So are there ways, like as an entrepreneur, that you are able to balance that like self-care or maintain like that really good mindset so that you
Mhm.
can achieve all of these things?
Yeah. Well, one, very excited to share the app with people soon.
Oh.
Cover all the details at the end. But I think that there's kind of a concept that is very applicable to startup founders, but really anyone can integrate this into their life, which is like, on your worst day, you're having your worst day. It's like all no's and you don't get what you want and this is going to take longer. Like what's your like, but at least still this. And so, in my view, like, some weeks are awesome and some weeks are super stressful and, there's rejection and, things don't go the way that I want. And so in my mind, there's like a few like, good week, bad week. I'm going to do these so that, I'm in control. I'm making sure that like, the worst, emotional like tail end of this is going to be kind of smoothed out. I'm still going to feel pretty normal and okay with it, whether it's that good or bad. And I think that's individual to everyone. For me, like meditation and exercise, like not like a ton of time on either one, but on a pretty consistent, regular basis. But going out and walking for 15 minutes before you start like a really long day, totally different outcome, totally different mindset, the way you bring yourself into meetings. And so unfortunately, I personally don't think that people can fully push and optimize every area of their life at once. I think you kind
Mhm.
of need to think, here's where I'm maintaining. Hopefully nothing is, regressing or getting worse. Like, kind of maintain your line. And then, find that one thing in life that you're gonna optimize and prioritize. And so like when you're a startup founder, a lot of that, that number one slot is going to be the business. And then part of that is finding, when you need to occasionally make yourself number one to prevent burnout or just to, broaden your mind, get exposed to some new ideas, get outside the house, whatever that is. Um, but yeah, I think that people need to think about, what are the things that will actually provide that real comfort to them, and then think about it realistically. And for some people, it's productivity, but it doesn't have to be. And this is also where I think on the scheduling piece, a lot of places get it wrong, which is that they think, okay, everyone obviously, wants to optimize productivity and they can do more by having more input and just more time, more productivity, more features, more power. And that's great, but like even really motivated people are only sometimes going to think, okay, productivity is the number one thing that I want. Some people it's okay, I've reached that burnout point or I've neglected this for too long. Health needs to take the precedence. Or a lot of people that, they've done well in their career, they're maybe a little bit older and family becomes a bigger priority. There's always going to be, the work stuff is always going to be calling to them and there's going to be emails making requests. So it's not hard to, let that be the priority by default. But, truly for a lot of people, carving out that like, I'm going to have dinner with my family, like, every night or at least once a week or whatever that is so much more important and honestly has a bigger impact on their ability to work and get things done. Um, there's, this is a very controversial topic in the world of startups, but, whether you should be in that like every possible moment, 60, 70-hour weeks is like the minimum, or, you can kind of do more by doing less and have balance and be ready to sprint or do, push extra hard when you need to, but not treating that as your default. I definitely fall in the latter camp, but, being transparent, there will be people who disagree with that. But yeah, I think you need to think, no matter what, know what potential chaos, what potential struggles or stress I might feel. This is what I do for myself, and this is not negotiable.
That's great. I think it is nice to hear that. And I've definitely heard both. Well, most of the other side where like, no, you just gotta pour everything into it. Or that's kind of how most people will like go at a startup or being an entrepreneur is you pour everything, all of your resources, all of your time and energy into getting it going. And then you forget about those little pieces, or you kind of really don't like flex your time to benefit you as a human being. So I think that's great. You mentioned going out into the community. So as an entrepreneur, are there certain communities that you would recommend other new entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs to be a part of? I know me and Joe met you at an event when we first started. But yeah, I'd love to hear if there's any communities that you would like to really connect everyone with.
Yeah. So, I'll give the specific communities, but first, I just really need to make the point, which is to go out, talk to people, engage in communities. It's not as easy for everyone if you're in a big city or here in Orange County. It's much easier than in some parts of the country or in other countries. But of course, there's digital meetups, there's metaverses, there's topic specific communities on all different kinds of platforms. I totally know what it feels like to think like I have this genius idea, but I'm so, early and I don't have resources. If someone hears it and they love it, they could just run with it. And like, yeah, that is like an occasional thing. I personally have never, out of all the founders that I've never met someone who's like, yeah, I had this idea and I shared it to the wrong person. And that person totally changed their whole life on a dime to pursue my vision. And then as someone else kind of put it to me, like, if you find someone who's like that, make them a co-founder. Like it would be awesome if people were just like so into Horus that they like wanted to go and make it themselves. But honestly, like everyone who I, introduce it to and they really like it, they want to work with us and not like start over from scratch because it's a lot of work. So go out, talk to people, accelerate your growth. You're going to need to hire people. You're going to need your network. There's a million reasons why. Just do it. Don't have to, do it 5 nights a week. Maybe it's once a month, once a week. Get out there and do it. So yeah, I'll kind of start more local and then zoom out from there. But first one I started with was 1 Million Cups in Irvine. Shout out. So that's Wednesday mornings at 8. Sometimes online, sometimes in person. Usually based around kind of Irvine, South Orange County. The pitch-oriented group. So I got to pitch my startup. I met my SBDC consultant. I'll probably talk about him a little bit later on, but really accelerated a lot of our business growth. And yeah, so there's that. There's OC Startup Council. So shout out Scott Fox. And OC Masterminds would be like the group that they go to, and he does office hours as well. Let me think around here. So UCI New Venture Competition, or the Stella Zong New Venture Competition, I believe it's called now. Excellent opportunity. That's how we met another of our advisors who really helped out at like very early stage, kind of saw the potential, committed, and brought his resources and network into it as well. So let me think. I personally, go to a lot of startup events in LA as well. So there's some good stuff in LA Tech Week. I would caution people to like thinking that always like being at every possible event and everything like that, it probably isn't the best use of your time unless you're like really early or you're like looking to get engaged with another startup, in which case, yeah, go crazy with that. But go out there, meet people. Don't be afraid to kind of poke your head out or go into a group that's you don't think you're necessarily kind of the typical founder in the room. I've been in CEO or kind of founder roundtables of just, founders of totally different startups. But, guess what? Who actually understands what you're going through? Probably not your family members, your, brother, sister. It's other founders. And so really any opportunity, especially to just get that like group founder experience, yeah, very likely it's going to be a large portion of people complaining about like, oh my gosh, here's this business thing that I have. But it's actually really, I don't want this to sound bad, but it's actually like kind of relaxing to hear about other startups' problems, because you're like, oh, I can like recommend something, or I know something that might help them, but like you're not nearly as invested in it as you are in your own. So you can help without like adding more stress or, worrying about one more thing, right? Um, yeah, I'm sure there's awesome groups that I'm forgetting right now, but those are just some of the top ones that come to mind. Rev Hub hosts lots of great events in Orange County, so
Thanks. Yeah, no, that was great. I know A Million Cups is one that me and Joe were like, we're gonna get to one of these days.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's super helpful. I know it's like trying to like write them down in the corner over here. But I will share when I send out a thank you, I'll send your LinkedIn so people can connect with you. So if they do have any questions, when we first met Liam, kind of speaking to the group here, I 1000% with Joe was like such a great presence, so knowledgeable and so open to help others like so quickly. The event that we were at the end, they were doing pitches, and I could see your hand go up for everyone, and just like the feedback that you were giving was super helpful. And there were some interesting pitches, I'm not gonna lie. And I think, was yours one of the first ones? Maybe how did you?
I thought I was either like the very first or right at the end.
I think
Probably.
you must have been one of the first, because I think either me or Joe had to hop off, and we both saw it, and we both thought, wow, that was really good. Can you kind of talk about how you got there? I know that you've been doing this, I mean, since high school, but it's different when it's like, this is yours, and
Yeah.
you're pitching to. It was a pretty decent group that evening, I would say. So how do you get from, putting that idea together and then being like having that presence in those spaces? Can you talk
Yeah.
about how that's been for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if I, could possibly start like a broader trend within startup founders, I want people to keep their like version one pitch deck and like kind of elevator pitch or recording of it. So that, like when people see them later on, they can play, the first clip and be like, I was that bad too. In fact, I was much worse. Like I could hear like one time I was, in the hallway for my in college, and there was like a VC who just happened to be there, and he's like, "Oh, tell me about your app." And I was like stumbling over the words because, like, it's like my baby. I
Yeah.
understand it. I think it's the greatest thing in the world, but like, how do I like objectively convey why my baby, that's like drooling and like can barely walk like all the other, ones, is so much more special and worthy of attention and resources and time and everything like that. So just like repetition, there's no shortcut to this. And you can accelerate and obviously listen to feedback and take notes and stuff like that. You can save yourself some of the pain, but like this is a repetition based game. Like study people who do it really well. Usually you'll every time you see someone pitch, as long as they're like somewhat experienced, you'll probably find like one small thing that you'll bring back into your own pitch, like the way they express something, or they kind of set up the analogy, or like the excitement they bring to it. So you need to see a lot of other founders pitch. You need to pitch to everyone. I think Ubers and Lyfts are like the ultimate pitch practice opportunity, because it's kind of the short opportunity. They don't know much about you. You don't, know much about them. And, like oftentimes, they have other jobs that they do, or they, they're semi-retired, or they, or they're also a founder and they run their own business that they're getting started. So like a very diverse set of kind of audience members and listeners. But then you have kind of that short opportunity, give them the message, hear what they say about it. Oh, I really want this because this, or like, oh my gosh, I know one of my friends, she's a parent, she so needs this. It's just like really high, like rapid iteration practice. And obviously, like, you're ultimately paying them for a service. So like, their feedback might be a little bit more positive than is accurate, but still, you're getting the repetitions in. They're, either going to say like, I totally don't get that, or like, yeah, that makes sense. And whether they say like, that would be great for me, or like, yeah, my, son would like that, or my kid in college, that might be something for them. Just, sheer repetition doing that. Recording yourself, super awkward, painful thing to like sit down, do it to the camera for, 5 to 10 minutes, hit stop. And then the worst part is watching it. You're like, oh, who is this? Like, why are they butchering my company's pitch like this? Except, we are the ones to blame. There's, and then of course, going back to like, go out to those community events. Like pitching one-on-one to your Uber or Lyft driver is really good just for like getting the messaging in, or like trying something new to explain it. But also, like get up there and do it in front of 60 people. It's a different game. And like I, used to do choir and musicals and stuff like that. So I'm, kind of used to going up and doing it, but it's very different when you're going out and you're presenting this new idea and it's something you really care about versus just like going up and performing. Like sometimes I feel like I could do other people's pitches way more easily than my own, because different level of emotional investment is learning the lines and hitting the right execution. So yeah, I wish there were more of a shortcut other than repeat it a lot. Other founders and especially investors give great advice because, founders, we do it a lot, but we're not necessarily seeing the volume of like, 100 of these a week or whatever. So they've just seen so many, and that makes them harder to please. They've seen so much. It's easy to just, like blend in with the noise that they get every day. But then of course, the flip side of that, welcome the challenge. See how you can stand out to them. I think one maybe unusual thing that I would recommend is pitch to VCs that don't invest in your market, which is to say, like, they know what a great pitch sounds like. They're going to be able to tell you if the messaging clicks or if like your order of content is totally wrong. But there, of course, there's that pressure of like, okay, do well. They might write you the big check or put you in contact with someone who will. It's more like they know, they can tell what a good pitch is. They don't need to know your exact industry. In fact, that's probably better because, a lot of the times you're pitching generalist VCs or generalist angels. It's lucky when you get that investor really knows your domain super well, but it's usually more generalist. And so, pitch to investors who aren't going to invest in your company because they can give really, really candid feedback that, is sometimes just like they're thinking, yeah, if you were like a founder pitching this to me, I wouldn't tell you this because I want to have the upper hand. But like, let me tell you, here's what you need to do. VCs are going to try and do this from you. You need to counter by doing this. Like, I wish there was something that we as founders could give back to those, like, non-sector appropriate VCs who just like help us with our pitches. But, welcome those kinds of opportunities, the challenging person, or like, the grandma pitch, right? If you can explain it to, grandma or like a 7-year-old kid, like that's great. Like probably don't do those exact words when you're in there with the specialist, SaaS VC, but, everyone has their own little insight. And so, don't think that someone like wouldn't get it or, I've met people from all walks of life, all places, and really been surprised by who loves it and who's like really about it. And someone who I think like, oh, they're like super techie, they'll get it. And it just does not click to them. So test your own assumptions, not just, here's what the pitch is, but like, who is it for? What does it mean to people? Get out there and talk, which is easy for me to say. I'm pretty extroverted, but it's, I've known many like very introverted founders who are like, yeah, I didn't love it, but it's kind of what I had to do. And I don't regret doing it. So.
Oh, that's great. I think the Uber tip is super helpful. I think I'm gonna try that. Not that I have a venture, but I think for me, it's easy for me to explain what my role is to individuals in this space. But explaining it to my family or explaining it to a friend that I hadn't seen in a while that is in a completely different field, it gets it's hard to explain. But I think also for me in my role as like a community navigator, I want to not just have resources that are used to being in this space, but resources that are just already existing in their own little worlds. And so yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna try that Uber pitch. I don't have anywhere to go that I would call an Uber as of right now, but maybe I'll
Well,
figure out a place.
one thing on that too, since you mentioned like parents and explaining that is, yeah, we can say like societal pressure, which is very real, says to us, but like mostly it's like family pressure or kind of, like, more within like a smaller, like tighter community to that founder. Like, trust me, like I have been in this position, but also like founders who like their companies are doing like millions in revenue, their parents will still like text them about it, like, how's that side project going? Your little free
Yeah.
time thing. Um, so, yeah, if people understand it, that's great. Or if they can understand like part of it, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But there are going to be people who love you and like they believe you can do anything, but they'll be like, but yeah, I don't know about this,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And if everyone is saying that, or people who should really get it are saying that, don't ignore that. Listen to it. Usually it's, the pitch needs to change more than the product itself until you have the product to go out and test. But don't be disheartened if your parents think it's a side project, because that's not uncommon.
Well, thank you. I have
Yeah.
one last question. Are
Yeah.
there any books or podcasts or yeah, just or like Instagram or LinkedIn pages that you would recommend following to the community?
So we'll start with the controversial one, which is Twitter.
Oh,
I was really hesitant to get on this for a long time, and I got it maybe like 3 years ago, just because I think, another distraction. I don't need another social media app, and probably just a bunch of garbage, like the occasional useful thing. And truthfully, like Twitter is great for finding people. And sometimes you have that random, like, you kind of walk past someone in the, internet hallway and they happen to really be interested in what you're doing. Like, that's cool when it happens. But, when you're starting off and you don't have a network, if you want to just go on and like find investors, find like founders who have been in your space, or like a head of growth that you're going to need like 2 years from now. I personally haven't found a better way than, X or Twitter or whatever. Try and spend as little time on it as you can, or just for the bare necessities. But there is some value to that, especially for founders without, a really strong network. Beyond that, I can think of a couple like angel blogs run by a Canadian angel investor. A lot of and another thing too is, look at when advice was made or when articles were written. The shelf life on this stuff is not super long. Someone who has like lots of experience and they're giving this like broad big picture advice that's kind of evergreen. That's very different from like someone who is maybe raising their round when markets were like going nuts in 2021, or someone who like tried raising right after the dot-com bubble burst. Be aware of who's writing it and kind of when it was made. Podcasts, let me think. I feel like I've been on more podcasts than I actually listen to, but Lenny Radchitsky, I think is his last name would be. It's a lot of like founders or like kind of first 10 hires at startups. A lot of good value that comes from that. I'm mostly a newsletter guy, so I subscribe to a lot of newsletters. Oftentimes, operators, founders, that kind of thing, and books. Can't get enough of those. I think EOS, like if you don't have a management or a business background, you want to like just learn like here's like a very robust framework that you could use or maybe want to use in the future, but you want to start applying lessons to that. There's a book, I think it was originally called Founder to CEO, and then it was like changed like The Great CEO Within. But look it up. It's like a Google Doc available for free, or you can purchase the Kindle version if you want. But it's so like, you're, someone with an idea and like maybe you know how to like make the tech part of it, but you don't know the first thing about business. Here's how to start like the habits. Here's how to form a team and good like team structure and processes. All the little things, communication best practices, or like, reading your actual terms and conditions, or like contracts and things like that. There's so much, you're not going to like create value by doing this really well, but you're going to prevent hassles down the road. So yeah, Traction by Gino Wickman. That's the EOS Enterprise Operating System. 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Good for like broad, big picture, like think about startups in a different way, or kind of disruptive strategy. Yeah, there's so many good lists of startup books. It's kind of like finding those that are most accessible and consumable from the get-go. Yeah, wish I had these more like cataloged in my brain, but it's kind of, if I need something, I think I find this, but internet's your friend, go out there, look for it. It's probably there.
Sounds good. No, those were all super helpful. And I mean, if anyone has any questions or needs specific recommendations, they can connect with you on LinkedIn, maybe.
Yeah, I'd like to make a quick plug on that. I have like, lots of templates, lots of business model templates, walk you through product strategy, pitch decks, whatever. Reach out to me if you're at that early stage. It doesn't take a ton of time for me to share this, and I kind of walk you through, or I've recorded instructions for it. So hit me up. Would love to help.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's exactly why we have you here today, is to just make sure those resources are available. And I know it's been tricky, I think, just like finding people that are in that super early stage, because most times people think like, oh, let me just try to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
And then when I think I need something specific is when I'll try to look for it on the internet, right? And so no, that's super helpful. And I wanted to be mindful of everyone's time. So I want to thank you so much, Liam, for